You can be happy today. I'll be happy when is a loser's game. Blaming externalities is drinking poison.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Money School podcast. I'm your host, Chris Naugle, and we are going to talk today about the truth about money. Actually, my guest today is going to talk about how he made millions of dollars, lost it all, and then made it all back doing what he loves. And I think that's the question I'm going to pose to all of you before we dive into this. What are you doing to get ahead in the wealth game? But are you doing something that you love? And if you're not, let's talk about how you can create that life. I think that's the sum up for today's discussion. So my guest is Kellan Fluckiger. I was practicing that. I got it. Kellan
You
Fluckiger.
got it perfect. Yes, sir.
Let me just give you a couple more highlights of this amazing human being. So first off, he's written 20 books, of which 11 are #1 bestsellers. He's working on book number 21. He helps tons of people create the life they want and the life they like. And I guess that's the thing, right? Like, what life are you living? And a lot of people bitch about their lives, but they do nothing to create the life that they want. Kellan, welcome to the show.
Chris, thank you. And the first thing I want to do is acknowledge you in front of your audience, because it takes a lot of work to create a podcast, to create a show of some kind. So I want to honor you for the good that you're adding to the world and the effort and energy you put in to bring stuff to people that will lift and bless them. And so thank you. I'm honored to be here, and I'm grateful to have a piece of your day.
I love it. I learned a long time ago, that life is really about giving. It's about helping others solve their problems. And if you do those two things, give and help others solve your problems, you're going to live the life you want and get all that you want out of life. And there's a lot of people that have said that, but that is the truth. And that's why I just keep going and giving my best stuff away for free. But you do the same darn thing. And I remember when we met out there in, I believe it was Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, when I saw you speak, and I was captivated by what you said in your story. And I thought, you know what, my audience needs to hear about this. So that might be a good place. I mean, I know you've made millions, lost it, made more back, but you literally created just an unbelievable life that you love, and you help other people do the same. So let's give everybody your story.
So there's lots of pieces to it. And in 45 minutes, we don't have all time for all the stories. But I'm going to start with this invitation. Everybody talks about doing what you love. Everybody talks about that sort of thing as if it's a thing out there. Someday I'll get to live the life that I want. That's like saying I'm going to work really hard and then I'm going to retire and then I'll enjoy myself. The truth for you, you know this, and for your audience, I want you to hear this. You can be happy today. I'll be happy when is a loser's game. Blaming externalities is drinking poison. And if you're not happy, the question to start with is, what am I believing right now that creates this feeling of unhappiness? I lived a 30-year career between 77 and 2007 in the energy business. I made a lot of money, had high-ranking positions, testified before Congress, had a contract with Her late Majesty the Queen of England, and blah, 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 all that stuff that looked really good from the outside. The truth was that I was struggling with the imposter syndrome. I was struggling with depression, with self-sabotage, and had been since I was a youngster. And the circumstances of my upbringing contributed to all that, and that isn't necessarily part of the story, although I wrote that, of course, in another book called Tightrope of Depression. So if you're interested in details, go dig that up. In 2007, I had a divine intervention, one of those life-altering moments that says you have an opportunity to do something else. I took that invitation. That was the end of 30 years in that other career, walked away from millions of dollars of contracts and walked off into the sunset and started my life over again. Not having any idea what I would do. Discovering then piece by piece as I worked on healing myself from my brokenness, getting help for the first time in my life for depression and for addictions. I'd been in and out of rehab. I'd been married and divorced 3 times. And at the time of that divine intervention, I was a $3,000 a week cocaine addict. Okay. All of that came to an abrupt halt, literally overnight in August of 2007. But I didn't have any idea what to do next, because while I got sober, suddenly the circumstances that led to that didn't fix themselves overnight. I had to do a lot of work, get a lot of help, and make a firm determination. And this is the first thing I want to leave with you. Nothing is going to happen for you until you say, I'm going to create this, whatever this is. A certain amount of money, a certain amount of joy. I am going to create this and nothing will stand in my way. That was the key ingredient of the beginning of my recovery, was I simply said, this is enough. I'm going to do something different. I don't know how to do it. I don't know where to go. I don't care, but I'm going to get the help I need and I'm going. So that took time. It took some years as I developed it and began to decide, as I began to heal and do the work, I realized that my journey of growth and healing and transformation could be something for others. So that's why I began writing. I wrote 5 books on meditation. I wrote the book Tightrope of Depression to tell my story and told the story of the miraculous events of August 2007. Then I began to go to events and just explore this world of personal development. Then it occurred to me, all this stuff I'm writing and doing, I could help people. So, what am I going to do? Well, I decided, I'll be a coach. I hadn't really explored it till then, and I did what you do. I looked it up. I took some courses. I got some certifications and began to do it. But I had to build that. I wasn't automatically a great coach, and I'm now as good as there is. But that took the work. It took the work overcoming the obstacles, the depression, the addictions, and all the rest that you'd expect. So here's the story. We went along for 11 years till 2018. Success began to come. Okay, I began to speak in different places. I wrote more books. And then in 2018, I had another extraordinary experience, if you'd think I'd had in my share, but I hadn't. In 2018, I ended up catching or contracting a fatal illness, which killed me. I died in the intensive care unit of the University of Alberta Medical Center. What I have a podcast also, and I interviewed a nurse a few months ago, and I told her, she asked me some questions, and maybe I was on her show. I don't know. But anyway, I told her what I had, which was necrotizing MRSA, which is a superbug, in both my lungs and in my bloodstream. And she just stopped the conversation and looked at me in horror. And she said, "You are dead." And I said, "Yeah, I noticed." In other words, there's no recovery from that. So I died, and during the time I was dead, I had a near-death experience, one of those things you don't expect ever to have that you hear about somewhere out there. I sat up on the table in the ICU, and I didn't see all the tubes and things. I learned later that I was actually restrained, and, my wife saw me and described it later, but I sat up, and I noticed that I was in a gray sort of room. The room was kind of photo card gray and a little bit misty. I couldn't really see how big it was. But I noticed over my left shoulder was a doorway, and I wanted to be at that doorway. And so suddenly I was standing at the doorway, and I was leaning on my right shoulder on the door jamb, and I noticed across the door, it was white on that side and gray on my side. And the light wasn't streaming through, but it was just, white and gray. And then there was somebody standing on the door on that side, leaning against the door jamb, like right across, right? On the other side. And this individual, he looked at me and he said one question: "Do you want to come home?" And in a millionth of a second, in the way that you can only know things in those places, I knew who I was talking to, what the doorway was, what the question meant, and the decision that was before me. And there was no expectation about an answer, meaning what the answer should be, but it was absolutely clear that there would be an answer. And none of that was said. But so we talked about what had happened 11 years before, what I'd been building and writing and doing. And I finally said, to this individual who I knew was God, and he didn't have a badge on. Someone asked me once, how did you know it was God? Well, he didn't have a name on tag, said, hi, I'm God. But you just know that, right? So he looked at me, I said that, and I finally said, well, I'm not done. I'm not done. And he said, okay. And that was the end of that conversation. I'm quite sure that's when they were able to restart my heart. And I was in a coma for another 17 days because of the horror of the infections that I had. But anyway, the next day, and people also ask, how did you know it was the next day? It was the next day. So we're back at the door, and I'm standing there in exactly the same position and situation. And the topic of the previous day didn't come up. He just said, okay, you're going to stay. So what are you going to do? And so we started talking about the books that I'd written and my coaching practice and my effort to help people understand their own possibility. You know, people coach on different things, dating, coaching, and, you know, relationships and money and how to make money and how to do whatever. And those are topic specific, and those are great. And I do some of that too. But I have found that the most important thing we ever talk about is who we are choosing to be. How we approach every situation, the language, the mindset, the expectation, the idea we have about possibility is more important than anything. The rest of it is just details, steps in a process. But who we're being as we do that's most important. Anyway, so we were chatting about what I was going to do, and then I had an experience. The best way I can describe it is, I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's 30 years old, maybe. Jodie Foster was in it. It's a movie called Contact, where aliens build a thing and, you know, you see all that. She takes off in space. I had an experience like that where I was moved through time and space. I can't describe it other than I saw glory and power and amazing stuff. And also had this feeling that if I hadn't been in some kind of a protective bubble, I would have been literally incinerated in an instant. Just in the participation, I felt like I was being fed with a fire hose. And that went on for a long time. And at the end of that extraordinary vision and input of nothing short of celestial glory and vision, I was sort of breathless, standing back at the doorway. There we were again. And four thoughts, pillars, ideas coalesced in my mind. And this is going to be important for you that are trying to make money, make a difference, and live a life of joy. Here are the four things. Number one is that you, and each of us, are an intentionally, lovingly crafted divine being. That is not maybe, that is not sort of, that just is. When you know that's sort of underneath, it's like, yeah, whatever. If you are fully present to that truth and do it on a regular and intentional basis, it literally changes what you think about and what you do every day, all day, period. The second thing is that you and each of you have a purpose, a mission that you not only agreed to before you came, but you were stoked about. That mission involves how you serve, how you add good to the world, how you use the gifts, talents, and experience that you have to both make money and make a difference. You have that mission. You agreed, and you were excited. Isn't that fun to know? The third thing is that you have gifts, talents, and life experience designed to help you create that impact, make that money, and make that difference. And the fourth thing is that all the help you need and I need is available from both sides of that door. So as I thought about those things, I looked up and I said, well, since that's true, why do we settle for crumbs?
Yeah.
And I don't know if in the economy of heaven, brevity is a virtue, but the answer was 4 words. Because you don't believe. I didn't facepalm. I thought about it. But it was like, okay, what can I do about that? Glad you asked. So then After that came another framework, which I wrote in another book. I wrote one book called Meeting God at the Door and another one called The Book of Context. The purpose of that one is, how do we identify and change those beliefs? Since the fact that we don't believe in our own possibility, in our own capability, in our own ability to find it and do it, and our ability to access that help, guidance, ideas, intuition that we need, how do we identify and change those beliefs? So that second book's called The Book of Context. And that's the sort of companion book to this experience. The third conversation and last one was the next day, and I came back to the door the next day. I was really excited. I was bouncing up and down, literally kind of like a person sitting on one of those bouncy balls at a desk, right? They were popular some decades ago. And I'm back there, and he looked at me, and in the third interview was one question. He looked at me and he said, "Are you sure?" And I felt like I was sucker punched. I thought, what do you mean, am I sure? Am I stupid? Did I miss something? Am I biting off more than I can chew? Am I an idiot? What? And so we talked about all those things and concerns. And finally I said, okay, well, yes, I'm sure. Okay. And nothing was said, but the conversation concluded with the finality that I knew we were done. 14 days later, I came out of the coma, and that's all I could talk about to the nurses, and everybody else was what I had seen and the context framework and all the rest of the stuff. Now, that is the substance. It's written in the book, like I said, if you want even more detail. The point is that when you're discouraged, when you have tried and failed, when you feel like you're not enough and you can't do this, whatever your this is, you need to reconnect, however you need to, with those truths. Because you are here for a reason. You are called not only to make a difference, but to make the money you need, because you can't have a big impact unless you make and create the resources to do it. My commitment this year is to reach 250 million people, and now I get to add this audience to my reach. And when I set that goal, my year starts October 14th, and there's a whole story about that we won't get a chance to do today. But that means I only got 2 months, because we're recording this in the middle of August. I don't even know when it's going to broadcast. I've got 2 months left.
That's the good news.
Okay, good news. Last year, my goal was 50, and I reached 75 million. This year, my goal is 250, and I'm not sure where I am. But that's all I do, because I know that if you imagine a world where every person, you knew in your own heart that you had capability, you could get to your goal, you have the support you need, and that we need to show up every day and create our best selves. We don't show up just to grind. We show up to create, to do good, create value, because money follows value.
Absolutely.
That's really simple. So that's my goal, and that's all I do. And in the process, I've written 20 books, and I have a 900-episode podcast, and I'm on hundreds of shows, and I speak, and I do all that stuff. I have 90-something songs in commercial release. But every single one of those things is done and given to you. And I have coaching clients, and I make good money, and I charge a lot for coaching. Whoop-de-doo. The point is to attract and help each person realize that you have the skill, the capability, and you're called to do good, create the cash you need, and make the difference you yearn to make.
Kellan, I've read a lot of books about those near-death experiences and the journey that people have gone on while they're, my uncle being one of them. Without any shadow of doubt, my uncle was with God, but different than you, when asked, my uncle did not want to come back, but yet was sent back. And my uncle went through probably, to me, what was the most severe depression I've ever seen anybody in. And it was a depression not like what I'm familiar with depression. It was a deep depression, longing for something that he had and it almost slipped through his hands. And that was his ability to be with God. Because what he felt in those moments, which he described it very similar to what you did and what other people I've read about, like that have described it in human in the way that we can describe it in human words, because
Right.
what you went through and what you just described there and what my uncle went through and what the other people that I've read books about went through, there is no words you can use to describe that experience, but we try our best. And also you probably lost more than what you had because you just can't take it all back. It's so much, especially that journey.
I could not begin to describe to you everything I saw.
And it's fascinating. And I think when you're talking about that door and you're standing at that door, and I think of myself, if I was ever at that door and I was asked, do you want to come home? I don't know whether I should be upset that this would be my decision or mad, but I would say, yes, I want to go home.
You know, there was no expectation.
It's not that I'm unhappy with my life here. I mean, I live a great life, but it's just at that moment, given that question, to be with God or to be here, I don't know how I could ever say I want to stay. I'll
tell you why.
That's just me. But I'm posing the question to you: how did you make that decision? You're there with God. You're in God's presence, the Maker. You could have went home right there, and we can all only imagine what that is. Anyone that's faithful and believes, you know what that is. But to say I want to come back.
I'll tell you why. The decision for me was not complicated. In 2007, I was 52 years old. I had spent my whole life making more money than I needed, being a foolish and poor steward with it, ruining 3 relationships, living as an addict and a big shot at the same time, kind of like a movie. On the one side, it's like, whoa, and then behind the scenes, it's like, living that life. And the way I describe it, and we didn't tell the story from 2007, but I always say if it was ever a poster child of someone who should have been left at the bottom of the canyon, I was that. And in that circumstance, the invitation was still extended.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And I felt like I don't want to be done. This is only 11 years later. In 2018, when this happened, and I yearned to be and do more of what I had seen. I didn't want to be done. Another thing that was interesting is the idea of being in God's presence, because I had been such a reprobate all those years was the most horrifying thought in the universe for me. I just couldn't imagine because of the things that I had done or failed to do. But what I noticed in that conversation was the complete absence of that. There was peace, love. There was love, and there was a pure invitation. And in the purity of that invitation, I was able to talk, and we were explored together what the opportunities were to stay and what else there was to do. And I just thought about what my wife and yes, I got married again, and that happened in 2007. That was part of that whole divine intervention. But what we had planned, what we had wanted to create, and that we were just like not done. And so that was the overwhelming feeling was I'm not done, and I get it. I can go home. But I'm just not done. And that was the feeling. And I think it had something to do with the fact that I didn't even start till I was 52 and finally figured out and had now, by 11 years, I'd done the work to get my shit together as a person. And then I knew, I know how to make money. I'm going to do it for something besides buying 6 cars and, all the crap that you buy when you have more money than you need and endless amounts of substances and whatever. I'm going to do this again and do better because I want to. I don't have to prove anything. I want to do that. And that's why I say the only thing I do every day, morning to night, I get up. And maybe we'll talk about the 3 things. I've only done 3 things or only need 3 things since 2007. Maybe we'll talk about those in a minute. But the only thing I'm working on is this $250 million. My business plan is really simple, folks. I never look for clients. I look for people to love, opportunities to serve, and problems to solve. And in that context, I get people who want to work together, who see and feel a thing and say, can you help me do X, Y, Z? And then we can have a conversation about X, Y, Z. And if I can, I'll say so. And if I don't think so, I'll tell them what I know and what I think about where to go. And it doesn't matter to me one hoot what they decide to do, because the motive and the intention is pure.
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action like so many others have by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up.
I think there's an important thing, this show and a lot of the things I do are teaching people how to build, preserve, and protect wealth and the journey to making your money work for you, learning the truth about money. But here's the real truth about money. We especially in the United States of America, I think more so than anywhere else in the world, we've made money the hierarchy. We've made money the thing that we chase our entire life. But I will tell you this from somebody that has come from having nothing growing up to somebody that has, a plentiful amount of money. Money doesn't make you happy. You've heard this all before, but I'm going to tell you it again. And money has this weird diminishing return. Unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life, the more of it that you have, the less of it that you care about money. And that sounds strange, but things that once you used to chase and you dreamt about and you worked toward, you just, go out there and do anything so that you could accomplish something, go on a vacation, buy your dream car that was on a poster on the wall. And then all of a sudden you get that car because of hard work, or you get that vacation because of hard work. That is special. That moment when all your hard work, the journey finally comes to fruition and you actually realize it. But as you get more money, you don't have to go on that journey anymore. You no longer have to work as hard for those things, because now all of a sudden you can just have them. You can just go buy them. And this is why you hear when you talk about multi-billionaires and 100 millionaires or any, just a regular millionaire, like the money isn't an issue anymore. So here's the best advice I can, and this is right in line with what you're saying. The best advice I could give anybody is, because money has a diminishing return, we need to redirect money and we need to give. And I will tell you this, the one thing that literally fires me up more than anything, makes me happier than anything else, is when I'm able to give. We have a private foundation. We give a lot. We give to animal shelters. We give to, different schools that we believe in. We give to lots of different things. And it changes every year. We write a plan every year for it. But I take more pride and joy in those things. And folks, like, you have to understand, like, those things, some people are like, oh, they cost you money. No. That is an opportunity. God gave me the resources to then give. And here's the funniest thing. I don't know how to explain this. I never will until I'm at that same door. And unfortunately, when I'm there, I think I can pretty sincerely say I'm going to say I want to go home. But when I'm there, I'm going to finally understand the universal law, which is truly a law, is the more I give, the more time I go out there and I do these podcasts, do webinars, do all the stuff that me and Kellan do every single day. We just give. But it's weird, because when you give, you could try to give it all away and all of a sudden it just all comes back to you, and then times 10. And it just keeps coming back and you're just like, holy crap, I can't even give it away. And the reason for that I can articulate in my simple human brain is because that's what we're meant to do. And the only time that stops is when we stop giving. Because when we stop giving and we start getting greedy and selfish, that's when the door goes up, or the door slams shut, I should say, and the money stops coming back. And that's the cycle. So if you just keep giving, I just feel like the abundance just keeps coming. I mean, that's what you just described in a roundabout way.
It's 100% correct. Here's the truth, guys, gals. Every single one of you came into this world with nothing. I don't care how much money you accumulate, you're going home with nothing. Right. And the only thing you're going to have is what you made out of yourself. That's it. So if there's such a thing as a judgment time, there won't even be a word spoken, because what I have become and what you have become will be blindingly obvious. Who we are. Nothing will need to be said. Who we have become, our hearts, our souls, our mind. Money is a vehicle, it's a tool, so make a lot and then do good shit. Like, have all you want. And I don't mean you shouldn't have a nice whatever, but like just in that way, my wife and I mean, Grandma, my wife's mother, lives with us. She's 93, so we take care of her. She's blind in one eye and needs a lot of help. When the Ukrainian war started and Russia did their stupidity, we have a family, mother and daughter, that have been with us 2 years, and refugees, and 2 years last June, and they're going to be with us till who knows, because husband can't leave, and et cetera, et cetera. And now she's got a job and doing okay. But those are just little ways, because it's part of the common humanity. Like, I don't care how many cars you drive or what you live in. You're going to be a hollow shell until you decide that the purpose we all have is to love and serve. And whether you serve with a little money or you serve with a lot of money, great. But choose to do that. And what Chris has taught you about the principles of money and how to understand it and how to bank yourself and how to do all that stuff is great. Do it, and do it with the purpose to become more expansive by how much you love and serve, period. And if I know one thing about life and about all this stuff, that is the foundational truth, because you're not taking any of it with you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you mentioned. What we both talked about in the beginning is creating that life. I think you had mentioned 3 steps or 3 principles or something to that matter. Let's
I've done 3. Yeah, I've spent my whole time thinking about this question. People ask, I don't know what my calling is, and I don't know what my passion is. Okay, so I'm going to give you something called the triple helix. And that isn't the 3 things I talked about in a minute. I'll talk about those too. But the triple helix is how to find that thing. You and I each have 3 piles of stuff. You have a set of skills you've learned. You're a snowboarder. You've learned to snowboard. Maybe you're a lawyer. Maybe you're an architect. You're also a person who's done a lot of work on Wall Street, and you've done, different things. So each of you have a set of skills you've learned. And then you are selling those skills in the marketplace. It's not surprising that most people don't really like their jobs, because you're just using one part of your life, the set of skills you've learned. The second pillar that you have is you have a set of gifts. Gifts and talents, things you're naturally good at. Some of them are obvious, like music or art or whatever, but lots of them are subtle, which has to do with your ability to listen or understand or intuition or see the big picture or solve problems or say the right thing. Those gifts are a pile of things that you have. The third thing you have is you have your life experience, which is the basket in which all of that unfolded. Now, mostly the life experience constitutes of the difficult things, the hardships, the failures, the poverty, the bankruptcy, the addictions, the betrayals, etc. Those things will either ruin you or they'll refine you. And sometimes they do both. Maybe they ruin you first, and then later you allow them to refine you. So if you think about your skills, your gifts, and the growth opportunities, the principles, the things you've learned from your life experience, if you intentionally look at those things and think of a big marine rope, like one of those blue, yellow, and white nylon ropes that hold big boats, if you weave yourself a thing that is your most effective offering from those 3 things, what your life has taught you, your gifts and your skills, you will find the thing that is the most fulfilling, where you can make the most impact and the most money. And it's not a surprise, because when you weave those together, you have something more valuable than any one of them alone. So it's not even weird to think that. So I have a process I take people through, but that's the gist of it. You got to weave your triple helix. Think of a DNA strand, only with one in the middle. You got 3 things. All right. So that's how you find your MEO, most effective offering. And by effective, I mean where you can make the most money, have the biggest impact, and have the most fun. The 3 things that I have done since 2007, which have changed my life and put me in the position to do exactly what I've just described. On the screen, you see Your Ultimate Life. I have that. That's what I create, teach. My podcast is called Your Ultimate Life. My LA Talk radio show is Your Ultimate Life. Here they are. Number 1, I created a PTAC, which is a personal truth and commitment document. It's a constitution. It's a Magna Carta. It's my agreement with God and the universe. Now, lots of people have talked about writing sentences or phrases or series of things like that, and they're useless. 99% of them that I have heard people use or tell me are useless, and I'll tell you why. I ask people, I start talking about oh yeah, I have that. Do you have it memorized? No, it's here somewhere. Do you use it every single day? No, I did that and it's really powerful. When you read it in the mirror to your face, does it make you weep? What? Throw it away and start over because you haven't said anything yet. If your agreement about who you are and what you are about with God doesn't call forth the most powerful emotions you are capable of experiencing, you haven't created it yet. So creating that kind of agreement is number one. Number two is then, even if you create something that powerful, if you don't use it, it's nothing. So number two is a daily creation process. People sometimes call it a morning ritual, a morning routine. I hate that because it's so cliche. But I don't know why God made us to die every night and get recreated every morning, but he did. So what? You have the opportunity to create yourself every day. So with that declaration of who you are and how you show up, and whether you use meditation or other processes, you intentionally take the first hour at least. My ritual's 2.5 hours, but it doesn't matter. Take the first hour at least of your day and create yourself as the most powerful person according to the things you have declared. And then you have the ability, like an Olympic athlete, to show up in peak performance every day, in every conversation, in every meeting, in every intention with your spouse, with your kids, with your conversations, everywhere. Why? Because you have prepared, you have warmed up. Can you imagine an Olympic athlete warming up after their event? Mm-hmm. Like, hello? Well, if you don't warm up every day, the way you design, and I teach a process to do that too, sorry, my nose itches. So that's the second thing. A document and then a daily creation process that's as powerful as your document is, that you never skip, ever, ever, ever. And people say, oh, I can't do that. Sure you can. If doing it makes you feel so good you can't stand not doing it, you won't skip it. Someone was going to say, if you did this thing, I'll give you $1 million every time you do it. Well, you'd figure out how to do it. Why? Because you think you want the outcome. So that's number one and number two. And then the third thing was get the help you need. You're not going to do this alone. We weren't designed to do that. My biggest change in 2007 when I started life over again was for the first time in my life to go get the help I need. For me, that was counselors and, coaches and other things, but I needed a lot of work because I'd tried to do everything on myself before, and it had turned out like, death. Literally before that event in August 2007, I'd attempted suicide for the second time 2 weeks before. And, that event, God reached down and said, okay, not on my watch. Here's your invitation. And I had to say yes, and I had to do the work. Nothing magic happened, but the invitation was pretty loud. All right, so those are the three things. Create an agreement with the divine about who you are. Create a process to make that real and present and powerful for you every day, and then get the help you need. We just watched the Olympics. Nobody got to the podium alone. Nobody performs on stage or writes a book or does any of the stuff that we look at and make movies about. Nobody does that alone. Well, then get the help you need. So those are the three things to do. And if you do those, you cannot fail.
I think that was a really good way to say it, because I know through my life, I didn't get here by myself. I got here with lots of help, lots of people kicking and pulling me, through it, and lots of people helping me when I was down on my knees, not thinking I wanted to get back up. But most importantly, I've had so many coaches, so many mentors, even to today, in different aspects of my life, I have different coaches. But as life has gone on and as, your career and everything else evolves, you need different people in your life. So folks, when you're looking at where you're at in life and where you want to be, and you're thinking about how do I create that, sometimes you just need that person that's going to grab your hand and pull you to where you need to be. Just give you that extra rah-rah, that extra, push to get there. I love the movie Rudy. You know, if you remember the movie Rudy, I paid Rudy to come out and speak to my audience. One thing that always I remember about that is Rudy had nobody that really believed in him, except for his brother. But then his brother passed, and then he had who? The janitor. And the janitor didn't even really believe in him, but then the janitor did. And the janitor was just that sounding board that just said, do it. And he did it. And I often wonder, like, how many people in life just need that janitor, that one unconditional person who believes in them. And folks, I don't care who that person is. It could be a relative, it could be a parent, it could be a child, but it's rarely those. You know who it usually is? A completely unknown third party who oftentimes you attract to you, but then just in life, cost is only an issue in the absence of value. You have to exchange value. And what is value? Sometimes it's money. You got to pay for a coach. And how much do you have to pay? Well, whatever it takes should be the answer. You have your goal, your life you want to create. There should not be a defined dollar amount that you would ever limit yourself to getting what you want out of life. It should be whatever it takes. And that's the thing that often confuses me about when people bitch and moan and, you know, come up with excuses as to why they're not there. And this happened and this excuse or this circumstance and this person did this. Listen, we all have one of those stories. This person stole from me. This person screwed me over. This person was the reason why I almost went bankrupt. Like that's always going to be that, but it's not that person or that circumstance. It's what you did about it and what you did next. So folks, you just got to get off your ass and do what it takes to live the life you want. And if what it takes is working with someone like Kellan, then what's your concern? And I often wonder that, like, why don't people understand that? And I think it's because we've literally gotten to a place in society where everybody just wants a handout. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of folks just want a handout. And I know it's none of you folks watching this because you wouldn't be watching it if that was you. But there are a lot of people out there that just want things given to them. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to think. They don't want to go outside of their comfort zone. They just want everything handed to them. And there was an interesting thing, and I posted it on my social media. It was 2 pictures of a lion. The first picture of a lion is a lion. We'll just call it at a zoo behind a cage, and the lion looked just fine. Now, that lion doesn't have to go out and kill anything, doesn't have to need to chase anything for its food. Its water's brought to it, gets to go out and do whatever it wants. It doesn't really have to think. Everything's provided for that lion. And then on the bottom, it had a lion just out in the wild. Now that lion's got a hard life, constantly got to fight, constantly got to chase its food, will starve to death if it doesn't go out there and do the hard work. Which one would you prefer to be? Because I know if you could ask the lion and the lion could give the answer, they all want to be in the wild. They want that hard life because it's the life that they create. It's the life they were built for. They don't want to be locked in a cage. And I constantly keep coming back to that because that's no different than us. We might not be lions, but we're humans. We're defined beings. But yet we want to be locked in a cage and everything given to us. Just look at politics right now. Like that proves it right there.
I want to use that story. I love it. And thank you. And tie it to my experience. When you and I go back to whoever created us, call it God, call it whatever you want, remember, the only thing you're going to take with you is what you have become. If you have chosen by choice to live your life as your top lion, believing that everything should be automatic with entitlement, with learned helplessness, if that's who you have chosen to become, then that's who you will be at that moment. Let me tell you something. I don't want to be that. I have stood in that presence. I want to be, the reason I said I wanted to come back, I want to be the person who turned over every rock, who crawled up every hill, who did everything I knew how to do, even if I failed. That's who I want to be the day I stand there.
I love it. That's what every one of you need to do. Look in the mirror and decide, who do you want to be? I wrote down 2 your books, Meeting God at the Door and the Book of Context. You got 20 of them. How do people find your books, or how do people get in touch with you to learn more about how you can help them create the life that they should be living?
Well, so when you have a name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't hide. My books are all on Amazon. I have a podcast called Your Ultimate Life, which is about how to build the life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with the gifts and life experience that you have. I have an LA Talk radio show, which is live on Tuesdays by the same name. I'm on most socials. I would say all, but I'm sure it's not all. I have a YouTube channel with hundreds and hundreds of videos called Ultimate Life Formula. I have several channels, but that's the one for you, Ultimate Life Formula. If you'd like to get a hold of me, my email is coachkellanfluckiger@gmail.com. And you can connect with me on social, and I would invite you to. And I would invite you to listen to and share the podcast, because taking those steps is a way to say, I'm in. I'm in as the sovereign of my own life. So there's several ways to get a hold of me. I'm not hard to find.
Folks, we're going to put all those, I was writing them down. We're going to put them in the description. So if you're at this point in the podcast, well, just grab a pen or just look at the description and write down whatever it is you want. I'll give you all the links. But with that being said, this is it's been powerful, Kellan. Thank you so much. And, it's just an unbelievable story that I heard live when you told it. And it was equally as unbelievable when you told it today. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome. And thanks again for having me and for all the good you're doing. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well, folks. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Money School podcast. Now it's time for you to go create the life that you want. We'll see you on the next one.